Welcome back to Moose Track Studio. Let's take a look at our task list from last time. Some things we haven't made a whole lot of progress on. Other things have gone probably further than they should have since I haven't done a video in a little while. So let's see where we stand on all of our current tasks and see what's next. We wanted to start with the back wall because that was the easiest. There was no soundproofing involved. It was pretty much studs already there. We would have to do some insulation and we would have to deal with power, but we didn't need to do that for the sketch. The first thing that we have to do is put the wall in. So we draw a line that's parallel to the back wall. We do have to put insulation in there and some things like that, power as we mentioned before, but none of those extend beyond the studs as they are at the moment. So they don't change any of the dimensions. So we can put our line in there that's parallel to the back wall, the surface of the studs, and that's going to represent the thickness of our sheetrock. And so we take measurements on the existing line, find out that it's a little too far away, and we put in measurements for that. So we want 3/8 inch sheetrock, so there's our measurement line, and we need to do some adjustment, and there we have it right there. And so that's the back wall, and that's all we really need to do for that for right now. The next most difficult wall that we're going to have to contend with is the side wall that goes to the outside. And the real complication comes not from the ground floor, which is what we're working on the sketch, but it'll come when we bring the walls up and have windows. Let's start by measuring over 3/8 of an inch and draw our outside of our sheetrock down. And we're zoomed in pretty far, so it's going to take a ways to get across this. And on top of that, our guy's in the way. So we move over a little bit, we connect to the other side, and that's our sheetrock. Now we will have to deal with issues like things if we decide to add a second door or second windows. Those are going to extend beyond the sheetrock, and we'll have to deal with those things when they arise. But our primary purpose for this is to get drawings in the hands of the fire suppression people. So we really need to focus on getting the basics down and getting our elevation figured out correctly before we bring the walls up. One of the things that's going to occur is this area in the north wall is going to be raised for chairs or a sofa or something like that. But there's a door right here, and there's a door on the opposite side about there. And in order to accommodate the door, we may have to do a cutout of any raised platform so that the door will open without any difficulty. So we may have to cut out around here and something similar on the other side. So that's something that we need to think about. But if we put it in the floor plan, when we try to raise the walls, everything will come up at the same time. Things start to get tricky when we get to the south wall. There's a particular spot that needs to be repaired before we even start. And that's the backside of the electrical box or communications box. Those holes go right through to the other side, and they have to be plugged before any other soundproofing is going to be all that useful. We got another layer of insulation that we'll need to put here, and we'll also need to deal with hangers to isolate the wall. It's not too much of a problem from a recording standpoint, but you can right now hear very clearly if the garage door opens or somebody pulls into the garage or makes noise. So we have to take care of that. There's also this interesting anomaly of a beam that comes right down by the communications, and it does stick out from the wall. So we have to do something in order to clear that beam, perhaps with the sonic isolation. I'm going to have to do some more research before we can continue the sketch. In order to do the back wall by the garage, if we're going to hang suspension brackets on the 2x4s, I'll need to know how that spacing works in order to get the correct dimensions for that. So we're going to stop with that right now and take that up next time when I've got some answers. In the meantime, how are we doing with the new tracks? So we started our Real Country Song project, and after trading emails back and forth and text back and forth and phone calls back and forth, we had a lot of mismatched pieces to the project. We had a chord sheet in A, we had a recording in B flat, and neither was totally correct. So we decided on settling on B flat, and that's what we're going to use for now until we get some feedback from our vocalist and make sure that still fits within her range. And in the meantime, I've got a new recording that needs to be ported over to Pro Tools, and that's what we're working on today. We start off with just a repeating pattern of drums, in this case a kick, a snare, and a hat. We then import a file that's got a recording of the fill that Barry, the composer, wants to put into the song. We start by selecting the file that has the recording and doing a format conversion and loading it into the system. Once we have that done, then presto, we have a new track. In this case, we don't want to start at the session start. We want to start at the measure that Barry told us we're trying to replace with this drum pattern. So we go in and select the measure that we want, and we load the file in starting from there. And that gives us a new file and a new recording. To prepare the file to be used for trying to drive the drum pattern, we first listen to it and take off all the verbiage and description and that sort of thing until we find the first beat of the actual pattern. Next, we trim off all the excess in the front before the beginning of the real pattern that we want. Once we have the clip and the trimmed correctly, we move it back so it lines up with the right measure, so that we can listen to it and use that as a guide to creating the drum track. Next, using the MIDI editor, we remove all of the existing fill or all of the existing drum pattern, and using our ears, replace it with the drum pattern from the clip that we can now hear correctly lined up. Well, there you have it. That's basically how we built the drum tracks for Real Country Song. One beat at a time, and it was time consuming, but I think it sounds pretty good. We didn't really add anything to the studio software-wise, equipment-wise, expense-wise, and even our task list, although in the micro level it might have changed some. In the macro level, our objectives are still the same, so I'm going to leave the task list the way it was, and I hope to see you next time on Moose Tracks Studio.